Welcome to our first video in our series of tutorials based on developing a MySQLi user registration system. This is going to be a simple and easy step-by-step tutorial where we show you how to develop your registration system using the new MySQLi. We're going to be developing this purely from scratch, and we're going to be writing 100% of our own code. The system will include user registration, login, logout, update information, and will also cover restricting access to pages within your website. Now, as I mentioned previously, this is going to be a series of tutorials, so we're going to break it up into easy to follow tutorials where we cover different sections of the system, and we're also going to be adding to this. We're going to be coming back and giving you more as time progresses. There will be links in the description of this video, and if you visit our channel on YouTube, there will be a playlist where you can have access to all of the tutorials in this series. But in this brief demonstration, this introduction to the video, I'm going to cover the system itself and give you a preview of what we'll be creating. So we're going to show you how to develop your page layout, the template. We're going to show you how to create this menu and this website layout. All of this we're doing with pure HTML and CSS. And the actual functionality will be a mixture of PHP and MySQLi. So let's go ahead and let's create an account. I'm going to create an account here. I'm just going to say Layla. Last name will be Brown. And the email will be leila@hotmail.com, and the password can be 123456. And if I register, you're going to see that we're directed to our login page. So I'll go ahead and enter my email that I just created. And of course the password. And we can of course now click on login. And that's going to take us to our account page. And this is where we will show you how to restrict access so that only users that have logged in and created their account can access these pages. And you can post all the content that you're restricting access to, or links to pages that you've restricted access to. You can post them here. It will be 100% secure. And of course, you can then, we'll show you how to create your update account information. So for example, if I wanted to change my email here to something like MSN or AOL, or I could change my password, and I can click on update, you're going to see that when the page reloads, see if I come back to my account and go update account, you're going to see that it's updated my information as I changed it previously when I updated the form. And of course, finally, we'll show you how to create your update page so that users will have to log in again. So what I've done is I've defined my site within Dreamweaver, and I've connected it to my localhost testing server. In addition to that, I've also gone ahead and created a table within my database called user. And this is what we're going to be storing all our data in for the registration system. So every time someone registers, their information will be held in this database table. The fields in it include user ID, which is auto incrementing, which is very important. It's our primary key. We have first name, last name, email, username, password, timestamp, and several others, which we'll get more into in depth into in the tutorial. Now, if you don't know how to set up, install, or define a testing server within Dreamweaver, then please refer to the description of this video, and there will be links in the description to other tutorials we've done based on defining and setting up your testing server within your local host machine. And then once you've obviously done that, you can come back here and follow this tutorial. Now, as you may have picked up, if you can see my files panel, we have absolutely no files in here. And as always, what we're going to be doing is starting from absolutely scratch, and be showing you exactly how to develop your system. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is just create a few files. The first is just going to be register.php. Very important. We're working with PHP. What I'm also going to do, I have a CSS folder where I'm going to keep my CSS files. I'm going to create two new CSS files. The first one is going to be called menu.css, and the second one is going to be called master.css. So it's very simple. And what we now need to do, if I just collapse the folder and open up my register.php, going to press F4 to collapse all my panels, because we're going to be working within code view. And as you can see, this is 100% purely from scratch. So just after my opening head tag, I'm going to create a new link, href, and I'm just going to select my CSS files. So the first one here is master, and we're going to reel the style sheet, and the type is text CSS. And I can just copy this line of code and make a minor adjustment here for our second CSS style sheet, which is for the menu. So you can see we can now easily access these style sheets within our page. And the first thing within my master CSS is I'm going to target the body, and I'm just going to set a margin of 0 pixels. I'm going to set padding to 0 pixels. And now if I save that, what you'll see is in my document, I'm just going to set this here, the page title. It's always good practice to name your pages. I'm just going to say register. And now, as you can see, we have nothing on the page. We want to start to develop something. Now if I come back to my code view, after my opening body tag, I'm just going to create a containing div. So let's just say div, and I'm going to give it a class of container. And within the container, I'm just going to create several other divs. This one will have a class of header, and then another div within that, and we'll call this menu, and another div, we'll say left body, right body, and finally underneath that we'll have a footer. So right now it doesn't look like much. If we actually come into design view, all we can see is the divs. So what we need to do is come over to our master CSS, and we need to create those CSS classes. So if I can remember correctly, we have first our container div. I'm going to set this to 800 pixels. So I'm just going to set the width here to 800 pixels. We can set the height to auto. We also want to clear both, and we'll center it using a margin of 0 pixels also. And I think that's it for now. But what we also of course need to do is the other ones. So header, we're going to set the height for this, because we've already defined the width within the container div. So here I'm just going to set the height for the header, and I'm going to set it to, for now, about 100 pixels. I think that'll be fine. We don't need to worry about centering it, because again, it's controlled with the container div. Next up we have our menu. and I'm not sure what height we'll set for this one. I think for now I'll set it to something like 50 pixels, but we can return to this. And following that, we have left body, and here is a little bit different. We're going to set a width, and the width will be I think 350 pixels. We need to do a few other things. We're going to float this to the left, and we will set a height. For now, we'll set the height to something like let's set the height to something like 400 pixels. Now similarly, we need to do the same for right body, except the width is going to be 450 pixels, of course, because the combined width is 800. And we want to float this one to the right, and we're going to set the height of this to auto actually. And that's about it for now. We can come back if there is anything else, of course. And then finally, footer, what we're going to set for this is just a height, and I'll set the height to something like 100 pixels, and that's about it really. Now if we actually come back to design view and it's going to update, you can kind of see the page we've created. There's something going wrong here. The left body div, we're floating to the left, is obviously, this is the container div, and you can see this isn't right. If we come to our code container, we are clearing it, but it's still showing. So I'm just going to set the overflow to auto, and when I do, there you go, you can see that's working. I'm just going to come back here also, and I'm going to set with the margin from 0 pixel top and bottom, I'll set that to something like 60 pixels, and that'll just lift that from the page. I think it would also be nice to, for the body, to set this background color, and I'm just going to set it to really light gray. But that also means on the container, I'm going to set a background color also. Of course, I'm just going to set this to white. And if I come back to design view, you'll see the page is starting to take some shape. I think 60 might have been a bit too much. So I'll set this to like 40 pixels, I think. But other than that, I think it's pretty good. Now for our header, I have prepared a logo. So I'm just going to include a background image. I've got a simple logo just for this tutorial I just put together. Repeat. As you can see, the logo is not centered. So I'm just going to come back here, and I'm going to say background position, and I'm going to center it. And actually what I'll also do is I'll set the width to 200 pixels, because it's only going to contain the logo. So you can see now the logo is much nicer positioned, and it's starting to look a lot nicer. The final thing that we need to do design wise before we can start programming the system is just, we want to create a simple menu, and I'm going to show you how easily we can do that. Now usually if we were going to program a CSS menu, it would take us a considerable amount of time because of course you have to write the HTML, but more importantly, you have to write the CSS, and the CSS can be quite extensive and complicated. So what I'm going to be using is one of our latest projects, which is called CSS Menu Creator, and there'll be a link in the description of this video, or you can just simply visit the site by typing the link into the address bar, as you can see, CSSMenuCreator.com. Now this site, the reason this website is so good is because of course you can watch the video, but it writes the code for you. So let me come over to some of the menus, and we're going to be using this menu, so I'm going to click on build menu, And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just build my menu here. So I need a few links, but I can obviously add to this at any time. I know I need register, so I'm just going to say register. And for now, the link, I'm just going to use a hashtag and I'm going to say add link, and you can see it immediately adds the link to the menu. I'm going to add another one, which is going to be login. Again, link will just be hashtag for now. Add link. And of course, you can do pretty much anything you want. You can add more. For now, this will be fine. And if I come down, you'll see that it's actually written the code for me. And you can see if I just add a link to show you, it's actually added the link. It's writing the code for me. And I can obviously delete these as I want, and it'll update just the same. So how do you actually install this? And let me show you exactly how. I'm going to take this. This entire div here. The HTML. I'm going to come back to Dreamweaver. Now this is my HTML, so this needs to go into the source code of my actual page where I want the menu to display. So within my menu div, I'm going to just enter return a few times and paste in my HTML here. I'll just select this and tab it in. There we go. And what we can do now is, if I come into design view, you'll see it doesn't really look like much. It's just HTML right now, so we've got an unordered list. That's because we need to actually have some CSS to actually do something with this. So, and if I come down, you're going to see that I actually have CSS, and this is why it wasn't displaying properly on the web page, because the CSS was missing. So let's return to Dreamweaver, and as you can see, the menu doesn't look like much now. But if I come back to my menu CSS file, and I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to make a few adjustments. I'm just going to get rid of the margin, and otherwise I'll save it and come back to my source code, design view, and you'll see the menu is now displaying. So you can see how powerful that CSS Menu Creator is, because it literally writes the code for you. You get the source code, so you can actually edit it and change it yourself, customize it for your own use. So let's just launch this in our browser and preview what we've actually created so far. So as you can see, we've got our web page, we've got our menu installed, and we can start to actually develop our registration system. We're ready to do that. So before we can actually move on with that, the first thing we need to do, now that we have our template, is actually create a connections file, which is going to connect to our database and our table. So I've got this folder here, and I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it connections. Within this, I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this connections.php. And within this file, I'm just going to come into code view. We're going to delete all the source code on our connections file. So now we need to actually create that connection. So I'm just going to create the variable con. It's going to equal MySQLi underscore connect. And here's where we define everything. So of course here the first thing is our host. So it's going to be localhost. Then we're going to have our user. So for me, it's root. Then we have password. Now, as this is a testing server, I don't actually have a password, and that's absolutely fine. It's not a security issue because it's on my testing server. Now, if you have a password on your testing server, you'll need to enter it here. But obviously, when I upload this online, I'm going to change my user, my host, everything. It will change, so it's not a security issue because we're only developing it now at this stage. But obviously, when it goes online, you're going to want to obviously enter your password, but you would of course anyway. And finally, we're going to define the database that we're working with. It's SiteEasy tut comment system. Now there are several ways to test this, but I know for a fact this is fine. So this is all we actually really need in our connections file. So I'm just going to leave this as that, and we can close this. Now what we want to do is on all these pages we need to include our connections file. So basically on the source code of the page, this is where we're going to be handling everything anyway, but I'm just going to create a new bit of code on line 1, and this is basically just going to require the file. Okay, so the file that I'm going to be requiring, of course, is in the following directory. So simple tut, actually spelled with a capital T. Within that, it's in a connections folder, and then it's just called connections.php. I can save that. You can now see that just as we can see our CSS files, we can see the connections file. So that's important because we don't want to have to keep writing this out on every single page. Now that we're including this page within our source code, we don't need to keep writing that out, which is going to be really handy when we start writing the code for the system. Now if I just collapse that, what I'm going to be doing now is actually starting to develop the system. So we're going to be creating the register page, the login, etc. I'm going to show you exactly how it works. So let's go ahead, and the first thing that we'll need to do is just create the form. So this is more the HTML part. Now I'm just going to duplicate this page, and you'll understand why later. So this is just an exact copy, and I'm just going to actually rename this to template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to obviously be writing, this is register.php, so I'll create the register script. It's going to have PHP for this page, but of course we're going to create login pages, etc., which are all going to be unique. So we're going to need to come back to this. So I'm just going to use that as a template because this is a clean version of the file. So within the right body div, and I can make sure in code view I'm within that div, I'm going to come over to forms and insert a form. If I expand my properties panel, I can give the form an ID, and I'm just going to call this register form. Doesn't need an action, but what we're going to do within this, if I come back to code view, is within my form I'm going to create a div with the class of form element, and basically get rid of this line. If I come over to master.css, I'm going to write out some CSS for this. So for form element, we're going to set the following. We're going to set the width to let's set it to 200 pixels. I think is good. We'll set a margin of 6 pixels from the top and bottom, and auto just to center it, and height wise we'll make it something like 40 pixels. I think that's fine for now. If I come to design view, you'll see we've got our div here. Actually 200 pixels isn't enough. I'm going to set that to 350. What does that look like? Yeah, it looks a lot better. So you can see that's exactly what we want. And what we'll do now is we're going to insert our form elements into these divs. So within this div, if I look at my source code, so within the form element div, I'm going to insert a form element. Okay, so within my forms panel, I'm just going to insert the text fields I want. So the first text field, if I select it, the name is going to be first underscore name. Okay, and we're going to say required. And if I actually now come back to my CSS, and you'll understand what the advantage of this is, using classes opposed to ID, and I'll explain that in a second. And I'm just going to say T field. Okay, and this is going to be similar to the above in that it's going to be 350 pixels wide. We're going to give it a border, of 1 pixel, solid, and we'll make the border color just sort of a light gray. And we will give it some padding from the left of about 6 pixels. We'll set the font family. Well, you can set this to anything you want, and also the font size. I'll actually set it to 17 pixels. But that's all you need to do. I'm going to save that. Now if I come here and I can select my form element, I can select the class, and it's going to be this T field, which stands for text field. Actually, I did forget one thing here, which was the height. We need to set the height to 40 pixels. Actually, I'll set the height to 35 pixels, but that's fine. Now if I save that, what I'll do is come back to my source code now, be a little bit quicker. I'm going to create a few more divs, and this is the advantage of using a class. You can apply the same class to multiple elements on the page, which saves a tremendous amount of time. So again, here I'm just going to be using the form element class for this div, but I'm going to create a few more. So we're going to have a last name, we're going to have email, and we're going to have password. I think that's all the fields we need, but if I've forgotten anything, of course we'll just come back. And of course within the next div I'm going to enter another field, and this is going to be given a name of lname. So well, actually last underscore name. It's going to be required also, and I can select the same class again, the T field. And again, for the following will be an email, so I'm going to enter email and get rid of that label. Apply the T field to it. So it's getting pretty easy. Make that capital E and set it to be required. And finally, we're going to have a password field. Similarly, we'll set that name to capital P and required, and we're going to set that to T field class. So it looks quite good now, but obviously nobody knows what these fields should contain. So up here, I'm just going to enter the placeholder of first name, and this one here will be last name. This one will be email, and finally this one will be password. Now if I come back and save that and come back to Explorer, what you'll see is this is the form we've created, and this is the placeholder. So if we put our cursor in or out, it shows us and displays the what the field needs to have and contain. So the last thing that we need to do is just create a form button. So I'm going to create another div here with the same class as previously. So class form element, and within this div we're going to insert form button. And actually we don't have any CSS for this yet, but I'm going to say register. Just going to call it register, and the value will be register as well. So we can save that. And actually, if I come back to master, what I can do is here create a class for the button, and I'm just going to set the width to 200 pixels, height of, let's say, 50 pixels, border, I'm going to set that to 0 pixels, solid. And finally we'll set a background color something like a sort of a nice blue color, something like that. And what we'll actually do is we'll call this class again here, but we'll say hover, and we'll just change the background color to a sort of a darker blue. We'll set the color of the text to white, and here we'll set the color of the text to white also, and finally the font size something like 24. So if I save that and come back to design view, we can apply the class to the button and save that. Now if I come back to Explorer here, I might need to just refresh the page, but you can see we have this quite nice design taking place on the page now. So right now what we have is we have our page, we have our form. We need to actually register the user, because right now when this form is submitted, absolutely nothing happens. So how do we do that? Well, we use PHP. Now the thing which we have to remember here is that although we're going to be doing this with PHP, we're using MySQLi, which is a very, very important point in this tutorial, because as I explained previously, we have a number of tutorials based on registration systems on our channel, but MySQL has become depreciated, which means that MySQL is outdated and being phased out of PHP. And when your server updates to the latest versions of PHP, any applications which use the old code, the old MySQL, will simply not work anymore. So you need to update all your applications and all your scripts to MySQLi, so that everything works and continues to function. So as we said, we're going to be using MySQLi. That's the point of this tutorial, and that's why this tutorial is so advantageous to you. Alright, so at the moment what we have is we have a register form, but at the moment this is doing absolutely nothing. So if we submit this, as I previously showed you, it's not going to do anything. It's basically just going to refresh the page, if even that. So we're going to handle that data, and we do that using PHP. Okay, so the first thing that we'll need to do is right at the top of the page, after we've required our connections file, we're going to create some more opening and closing PHP tags, and everything in between this is where we're going to handle the data. The first thing is we obviously only want to run this code if the form has been submitted. Otherwise, we don't want to do that. It would only create errors. So to do that, we need to put it in an if statement. So I'm just going to say if, and here I'm just going to say is set, and of course we have our opening and closing curly braces. And what basically we're checking is set is that the button, so post the register button has been submitted. The form has been submitted. So we named our form button register, as you can see. The next thing that we want to do is we need to create some variables that will be calling later on in the script. So to do that, before we create any sessions or do anything like that, we need to say session underscore start, and then we can start creating our variables. So the first one is just going to be fname, stands for first name. The next variable we'll create will be last name. We'll create email, and we'll create password, which I'll just say PW. What that equals is basically very simple. It's going to be $_post, and that's going to equal, and I'm just going to save time. I'm just going to copy this out for each one. just to save some time. And if I come down, we can see we gave the first name form element an ID of first name. So that goes here. I believe this is last name. I can remember the others. It's just email and password. So what we're doing is when the form is submitted, we're checking the form is submitted. If it is, we're creating various variables, and the values of the form fields, so first name, last name, email, and password, are being inserted into these variables, which we'll use later on in the script. So now that we have all the variables that we need, we can write our SQL. So to do that, I'm just going to create a variable called SQL that's going to equal the following. Now, as you can see, we created this variable here called con, stands for connection. Within that, it's just our MySQL connect. So we're connecting to our table and our database there. So I'm going to call that variable. And then I'm just going to run that query. So this is the query that we are writing. It's going to be insert into user. And here, this is where we will list the fields within the database. So I know we have, I think it's F name separated by a comma, last name, email, and password. And then we need to insert the values. Okay, and as these are variables that we're using, we're going to insert these into, well, in between opening and closing curly braces. So we have F name, we have L name, we have email, and finally we have password. So I'm just going to explain this. I'll pull up my table, my database here. So it's a little bit hard to see. If we look at the SQL here, I'll just collapse this. First of all, you can see we're saying insert into user. This is the table that we have here. As you can see, this table is called user. We then have the following fields. So we have first name, last name, email, and password. So of course we have written that out here, first name, last name, email, password, separated by comma. But we have the values from the form submitted. The data is in all these variables, and we're calling those here, and because the variables, we're inserting extra opening and closing curly braces. So it's really quite simple. So let's test this now. So to test it, it's going to launch this in a browser. So let's launch it in Explorer. Let's enter something like John Brown, and we'll just say John at msn.com, and the password can just be 123. Now I'm going to say register. Now we've not been redirected, we've not got any success messages. That's fine, we haven't programmed it to display anything. Only thing is we haven't got any way of seeing if it's actually inserted or not. See, it successfully inserted it. I do see one error. Obviously, if we see the email and password, it's just entered, it's not entered it, and that is because we forgot the $ on the email and password, because obviously they're variables. So let's just test that again. Let's just say Ashley brown this time, and we'll just say Ashley at msn.com, and we'll say password 123, register. Let's come back to our table, reload it, and you can see it's working now. Ashley Brown, Ashley at MSN, password 123. So you can see this is working. And what you may want to do now is, once they've registered, is redirect them to a login page. And to do that, we'll just say header. And this is where we'll specify the location. So we don't actually have a location yet because we haven't got a login page, but we'll call it login.php. So that will then register them, and it will redirect them to a login page once they've registered. So let's just get rid of all these unnecessary spaces. And yeah, so what we've done here, just to explain the code, we've checked that the form is submitted. Once it has been submitted, we've captured the data and turned them into variables. And we've then used those variables in our query, and once they have registered, we're redirecting them to a login page. What we've done in this tutorial, as I've previously explained, is we created our website layout. I showed you how to create your forms using HTML and CSS. And what I've then shown you how to do is handle that data using PHP and actually insert and store that data in a database. Now, this is going to be broken up into a series of tutorials which you can access from our channel. There'll be links in the description of this video to all of our tutorials in this series on creating a MySQLi registration system. And the next tutorials will cover the login pages, page access, restricting that, and of course updating and deleting users. So please refer to the description of this video, or visit our channel for the series on the MySQLi registration system. And in the next tutorial, we'll be looking at creating the login pages. Thank you very much for following along with this video tutorial. I'd just like to take this opportunity to encourage you to visit our official social network, simpletut.com. There'll be a link in the description of this video, and this is where we post all of our tutorials, and including the series on the MySQLi registration system. Here we have a huge learning resource for you where you can learn new things in building all different types of website applications, including file upload, registration systems, MySQLi tutorials, PHP classes, various different things, from building content management systems to various different kinds of e-commerce tutorials. Now, if you do have a question on this or any other of our tutorials, or perhaps even a question about a project you're doing yourself, then we do have an Ask a Question area on our site where you can post your question, and a member of our team, or perhaps even another user, will get back to you with support. We also have a freebies section and a blog where you can access other kinds of important and easy to use resources. And of course, if you are a fan of our project, then we do have a donate button on the site if you would like to contribute to our project. Of course, it is your support that enables us to continue bringing the free resources and content that you like. You can also access our Facebook page on our official website, and there'll be a link in the description of this video where you can like our page. We've reached over 2,000 likes. We've reached over 2,000 likes, and we continue to grow. But here, if you like our page, of course, we will keep you updated on a regular basis as new tutorials come out, new resources, freebies, and various things like that. As they become available, you will be one of the first to know. And of course, I'd also like to reference something we incorporated into this tutorial, but it really is a fantastic resource for you. But CSS Menu Creator, there'll be a link in the description of this video. You can literally use this to build your menus. So it's an incredibly powerful tool and something you can incorporate into your own projects to save you time. It's a massive time saver. But of course, if you are looking for an easy solution to get online quickly, then please visit our official website, which is siteeasy.com. Again, there'll be a link in the description of this video. And here we offer a range of different applications and pre-built websites, such as our user registration system, CSS menu generator, site search, digital goods for PayPal, comment systems, billing systems, contact forms, and much more. We also offer a range of pre-built websites, including our e-commerce websites, our social network, content management, file upload, property listings, much more. And of course, if you would like to get in touch with us for any matter, if you would like custom web design or inquire about a project you're interested in, then please use the contact form on our website or any of our other websites, and we would be more than happy to get back to you.